There are a lot of you, such as, much like myself, are big fans of Edgar Allan Poe. And Poe once said that the death of a beautiful woman is unquestionably the most poetical topic in the world. And Poe, I'm not just quoting him because I thought the quote fit today's topic. I'm quoting him because he is actually kind of part of this story. We'll get to that later. Mary Cecilia Rogers was born in 1820 in Lyme, Connecticut. Now, in the 1830s, she moved with her mother to New York City. And Mary was working in Anderson's Tobacco Emporium for a long time. And men would come in there specifically to see her, and she kind of became known as the beautiful cigar girl. She was pretty popular with the guys. The guys, really liked her. They thought that she was just gorgeous. They thought that, she was really something special. So she kind of became like a local celebrity. On July 28th, 1841, along the Hoboken shoreline of the Hudson River, Mary's body was discovered. Now, you can't really find a cause of death on Mary, and in fact there's not a lot of evidence, but that's most likely because it was the 1840s. There's not a lot of investigation that can go on as far as forensics and things of that such. This is the oldest case that I've covered, I believe, on this podcast, and you're going to notice that there's not a lot of evidence that I'm going to give you. There's not a lot of suspects that I'm going to be able to give you, but I'm going to tell you her story. I'm going to tell you about Mary, and I'm going to tell you about some theories about what happened. So, a little backstory on Mary. Her mother owned a boarding house on Nassau Street, and in this boarding house, there lived a man named Daniel Payne. Now, Daniel and Mary fell in love, and they became engaged in 1841. This is important because A, Daniel ties into a couple of the theories, and B, he was the last person to see her alive. So, let's start at July 25th, 1841. Which is 3 days before Mary's body was discovered in the Hudson River. On this day, she went to her aunt's house for a visit, and she never returned. And at the time, the police didn't take it seriously because, unfortunately, Mary had gone missing about 3 years before this as part of a publicity stunt for Anderson's Tobacco Emporium. So they just kind of thought, this is just another stunt. She'll come back. It'll be fine. But Daniel was afraid that it wasn't a stunt. So he started creating flyers and things to kind of get the word out there. And so her ex-boyfriend, Arthur Cromelian, I'm probably not saying that last name right, actually used to be a boarder at her mother's boarding house as well. He saw the missing persons flyer that Daniel Payne had created, and immediately, as soon as he saw it, he went to Hoboken to spread the word on that side of the river. Unfortunately, he arrived just as they were pulling her body out of the river. And so you're thinking, I assume, like I thought, well, that's super duper suspicious. And the police thought so too for a time. But they investigated Cromelian and could not connect him. He had an alibi. And so eventually he was ruled out as being the murderer. And so after they ruled out Chameleon, the next logical person is Daniel. And let's talk about why, and why he's a solid theory. He was the last person to see her alive. He's the only person that believes she was actually missing. So he's put all this effort into finding her, which could be seen as either he wants to throw suspicion off of himself, or that he was genuinely worried about her. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. And so obviously, he became a suspect. But he had a solid alibi, and he was eventually ruled out as a suspect as well. This case just kind of blew up, and even the New York governor put up a reward of $750 to anyone who had information. And now, back in the day, $750 was some cash money. That was that was a big deal. Okay, so now we move to September of 1841, and some boys playing in a field, near Sybil's cave find bloody clothing. They take it to their mother, Frederica Loss, who is the manager of the Nick Moore House, which is a pub, and she gives it to the police. The police speak to her, and she admits that Mary and an unknown man came in to Nick Moore House on July 25th. And she also admits that after they left, she heard screaming from the woods, but didn't report it, which is also suspicious. But we will talk more about Frederica in just a moment. Now, there's not much that happens again with this case until October. And in October, Daniel kills himself right in front of Sybil's cave. Daniel, now, if you'll remember, was Mary's fiance. And he kills himself right in front of the place where her bloody clothing is found. Which is definitely sketchy on his part. For sure sketchy. But, I mean, maybe he just wanted to be close to her one last time. I don't know. I guess since it's an unsolved case, you could kind of make up your own theory about why he did what he did. But whatever. Now, this is the moment that you Poe lovers have been waiting for. This is where Edgar Allan Poe comes into our story. Now, Edgar was not living in New York at the time. I believe he was living in either Pennsylvania or Massachusetts at the time. But he remembered seeing the news reports from when Mary went missing back in 1838. And so when he saw her name appear in the papers again, he kind of became obsessed with her case. He started doing research, and he started just kind of following the clues, becoming, a detective in his own right. And the year after her death, he published The Mystery of Marie Roget. And I'm probably saying that last name wrong, but I'm trying here, y'all. And it was a sequel to Murders at the Rue Morgue. And while, he changed names and he changed locations, he moved it to Paris, things like that, he kept the story mostly the same. And he even claimed that he solved the case. But now the thing is, if he did indeed solve the case, he never named the killer. And of course, the police thought that he was just insane. And so they didn't follow any of his leads, if he gave them any. And, so yeah, that was kind of that. Mary is often connected to Edgar, quite a bit. And it is intriguing that he became so obsessed with the case but there's not a lot of reason for him to be that strongly connected to the case. Her murder, was an inspiration to him, but I think that's about as far as it goes. Now, I told you we would get back to Frederica Loss, and, well, here we are. She died, I won't say shortly, she died a while after Mary's body was found. And unfortunately, it was a slow death, so there were days and days of her just kind of in a delirium, dying slowly. During this time, she claimed to see Mary, and she confessed that Mary died during an illegal abortion, and Frederica's sons had dumped her in the river. And it's one of those things where it's like, yes, she's in a delirium, but also, why would she make that up, even in a delirium? So, take it as you will. But the police thought that it was legit. They charged her eldest sons with the crime, but unfortunately there wasn't enough evidence, and they let them go. Alright, so that's the case. Let's talk about which theory I think. And the theories that I presented here were Arthur had killed her as one, Daniel had killed her as one, or an abortion had killed her as one. And I mean, there's always the possibility that it was a stranger murder or something like that. But those are my three main theories that we're going to go with. And the theory that I believe probably has the strongest possibility is the abortion theory. And it's a sound theory, maybe solely based on the fact that there was an abortionist named Madame Costello that operated in Hoboken around this time. And if you'll remember, Mary came to Hoboken. And it's even rumored that Frederica Loss had something to do with Madame Costello. So, I mean, it's a whole thing that, to me, is a solid theory. Now, this could also possibly explain Daniel's suicide. Because he left a note, and his note said, "To the world, here I am on the spot. God forgive me for my misfortune and misspent time." And he's clearly, saying, I've made mistakes, I have done things that are bad, and this is my way of atoning for them. I can't deal with the grief anymore. And again, that could be just because he was so distraught over the death of his fiancée. I don't know. But to me, the abortion theory is the most sound theory that we have. Alright guys, that's all I've got for this case. I'm sorry there's not a lot of evidence. I did research on it. It's such an old case that I think a lot of, if there was any evidence to begin with, there's just not much left. But as always, I would